Hi guys, Savage Sam here on behalf of Clockwork Racing Engines. This is an introduction video just on the Nitro Mizers, on how to use them and how to install them correctly in your cars. They're available from the Clockworks website or through myself here in Australia, but let's get down to it. Basically, with the Nitro Mizer inserts, when you purchase the product, it comes with 3 different size inserts within the packaging. Here on the right we have basically your stock Nova Rossi insert. When it comes down to installation of the product, probably the best way to explain it is obviously choosing the correct size for the application you want. Throughout the prototype testing, I've been running the orange insert in my truggy, the purple in my buggy. Now that we have the production completed and they're now being produced, I'm probably find that we're going to be using the orange and the purple for the truggy motors and probably the purple and the blue for the buggy motors. But at the end of the day, it comes down to your track conditions and weather conditions and what you want to get from your motor with added bottom end power and also added run time. When it comes to installing the inserts, the best way to go about it, obviously, starting point would be your idle gap. I came up with these little tag wires years ago to make it a lot easier to set an actual value idle gap opposed to guessing somewhere thereabouts will do. When doing your idle gap, obviously having the car be fully closed, you're checking your idle gap with the venturi out, making sure that this will pass in and out through the gap. Since running the Nitro Mizer prototypes, what I found is that I can actually close the gap a little further from where I've been running over the past 3 or 4 years, which is at 0.05. So at 0.05, all I've been doing is taking another hour off, which basically brings it down to a 0.42 idle gap, which is probably as low as I would run my idle gap. Obviously, individual conditions are going to set where their idle gap will be. Once you've got your idle gap set, it's just a case of installing your insert around the correct way. You want the flow over the idle gap itself to get the optimised power and supply of air and fuel. So once you set it up correctly so it's lined up, they're a nice snug fit. They've been really well made, and yeah, once installed, you basically just make sure it's turned just the right spot so that when the carby slides open, you can look down through it and make sure that it marries up with the bottom of the venturi. Now, once they've been installed, if you watch later on in the video, I will have photos up with a gallery with close-ups to show what it looks like as a close-up. But when it's installed, you want to make sure you set your end point just past the venturi. So obviously, running the smallest insert, you're going to have a very small throttle throw. Running the next size a little bit further, and the larger one a little bit further. So yeah, getting that endpoint set correctly is going to get you your run time. It's going to increase your bottom end power, and it's going to get the best out of your Nitro Mizer inserts. So yeah, that being said, when doing it on a motor, obviously same principles. With your carby installed, you want to make sure that you set your idle gap correctly in the first place. Once your idle gap has been set and it's set correctly, it's a simple case of picking the insert you're going to use, get the insert, slide it in, make sure it's seated properly and pushed all the way down into the carby. They fit snugly, and again, just make sure that you have your end point set on your linkages with your controller so that it doesn't draw past. I mean, that's a very small travel for a throttle when you think the carby can open a long way. We're only using about 60% of the carby even with the big insert. So you want to make sure that endpoint is set correctly to get the best out of your engine. Now, once you've actually installed the insert, like I said, once your idle gap's set correctly, putting your filter on, I found through testing that make sure you take as much excess oil out of your filter to allow the best airflow to get through to the engine. I see it all too often at tracks where people have their filters completely full of oil or a lot of residue and a lot of oil in the filter itself. That's just going to reduce airflow. It's no better than having a clogged filter full of dust and dirt. You want to make sure that the insert is installed and your airflow is nice and clean. then let's get down to the tuning. When it comes up to tuning, basically what you want to do is I've found across 4 different motors that I've tested the inserts in that you need to lean your bottom end a little, you need to lean your top end a little. That's going to vary across every engine. It's also going to vary whether your tune was correct in the first place. With the inserts installed, I've found that about 2 hours on the bottom end and about 3 hours on the top end has been about the average across the 4 motors I've tested. But it's a simple case of your tune in the first place. You're going to have to work out where it needs to be for you with the insert installed. The best possible way, obviously, with the idle gap set correctly is get the car up to temperature. Make sure you're running at race temperature, so before you start playing with needles, when you install the insert, your tune's going to be richer from where you were originally, unless you were very lean in the first place. Once it's up to temperature, basically bring it in from high-speed passes and slowly lean the bottom end until there's no load up. Let the car sit for 10 seconds, pull the trigger. If the car pulls away crisp and clean, you know you're very close to the correct tune. If it loads up, you know you're a little bit rich and you need to lean the bottom a little bit further. If you're obviously pinging and it's raising up, the idle's coming up at a standstill, you know you're a little lean on the bottom. So just obviously get your bottom end set correctly so that you can bring it in from a high-speed pass, let it sit for 10 seconds, pull the throttle hard and the car pulls away perfectly. Once that's been done, obviously start leaning your top end, drive it through wide open passes just to make sure it's not breaking down, and slowly lean on the top end until you get it to the right place. Obviously you go too far, the car's going to break down under acceleration, or it's going to ping heavily when you come off throttle. So once you've got your top end tuned, again it's just checking the bottom end, bringing the car into a position where you let it sit, the car will idle, and then you pull the trigger. Obviously when tuning the motor, you've got your chassis, your motor, your engine and everything up to temperature. Just make sure obviously you're about the mid-tank mark, so you're tuning the car at race conditions opposed to tuning the car with a full tank, and when it gets to the bottom of the tank the car leans out a little bit. So yeah, I always try to tune my car at the halfway mark, so that way you've got an indication or a very close balance so that you get a good tune from the start of the tank to the bottom of the tank. Now, any other questions can more than likely be answered by John and Neil at Clockwork Racing, or for anyone on the Australian RC community, you can contact myself and I'm more than happy to help you, or if I'm on site at a track, feel free to come over and say, Sam, need a hand. Anyway, that's an introduction on the Clockwork Nitro Mizers. I hope that's been insightful and helpful. If you have any questions, I'm sure you'll be able to hit the comment section down the bottom of this video and we'll go from there. Okay, all the very best from Savage Sam. Thanks.